Hello, NAEE family. Welcome to this virtual activity walkthrough. This first portion here, I'm recording after the fact because I forgot to start recording, and then it will switch over to the live event that was recorded here in just a few moments. So real quick, we started with just sort of an overview. What you're going to see in the activity here is a very rough draft of two activities. Well, one's in more final form, the trade. The other one's in a little more rough draft form. We were still working through it. You're going to see use of Menti, M-E-N-T-I, or the teacher side of it's through Mentimeter, and we used a Google form. So there were some preliminary things, just getting people ready for that. The agenda you'll see in the recorded version is there was a trade activity we did first, and then we tried to run a sort of a market in a particular product, and then you'll hear that described. There's two different ways to do that. We sort of ran one. One thing I did go over with the group on Friday before we started were a few caveats that I thought were important. One was that the goals section you see here on this slide was important to me, that we try to get students involved in these virtual activities so they're not just sitting behind a screen and just listening to us talk the whole time necessarily. I wanted to try it as best as possible to retain the basic spirit of the activity. Like, there's a reason you do the Why We Trade activity. It's partially to teach content, but it's also partially to get the students to feel the happiness and the joy they experience from trading and how it improves their lives. So I wanted to try to retain that as much as possible in a situation where everybody's sitting at their house. It needs to be as easy as possible for teachers to recreate. And I was trying to avoid as much as possible things like, well, you have to have Zoom for this, or you have to have a Socrative account, or you have to whatever, and try to make it pretty universal. I will say the first activity is pretty reliant on Zoom, but as other platforms get breakout rooms, it would be less platform specific. I was not endeavoring in this to try to get a perfect recreation of the activity. The market in cocoa or wheat or oil or whatever you do is not going to translate perfectly online. And so that wasn't the goal. The goal is to try to get some semblance of it and retain the basic spirit of it. So where we started, where was the trade activity, which I had conducted until Friday. I had conducted it 9 times. Now that would be 10. And in various group sizes. It's worked every time, sometimes a little better than others, and I think I mentioned that in the recorded section that you'll get to here in just a moment. You do need breakout rooms and some kind of polling software to make this work. For the market activity, the way that this one's going to be run, you're going to need a Google form, some kind of basic spreadsheet. Like Google Forms will export to a spreadsheet. If you used something else, like a Poll Everywhere, or a Socrative or something like that, you would have to, I think, download it to an Excel sheet and then go from there. And then the way I did my graphing, you need some kind of annotation software, whatever your favorite version of that is. So we started with the trade activity, and the way you get the students their items, because if you're going to trade something, you have to have an item to trade. The way you get students their item, and since you want it to be random, is by assigning them a number between 1 and 30. Or let them pick a number. I had enough people on the Friday activity where I just let them choose a number between 1 and 30. You could also have them use their birthday. You could also, alternatively, have them go find something from their house. So a coffee mug, a guitar, or whatever, and have them bring that. And so what has just happened, I'm about to switch over to the Friday recording. What has just happened is everybody has gotten their number, 1 to 30, and they have been shown this slide, and this slide gives them their item. Now, I didn't hold this up for very long, and the idea is for you to find your number quickly because I'm going to take the slide away. So at this point, everybody's gotten a number. They've looked on here to see what their number is, and I have asked them to go to menti.com. This code will be expired, obviously, by the time you watch this probably. But I've asked them to go to menti.com, M-E-N-T-I there, and enter how happy they are with their item. And that is where the recording picks up. say it's coming out really, really good. You will in a moment. All right, so let's talk about these results. How many do we have in here? We've got 29. That's awesome. You guys are great. Thank you. A problem I have run into a little bit with this is sometimes people they can't quite figure out the Menti thing, even though I try to make it as simple as possible. The other problem is, like you guys all know, some people just don't participate. They put the webinar on and then they walk away and whatever. But we got good participation if we got 29 folks. Check out what we got going on here. Boy, we got 16 people in our universe here that are in what I would call happiness poverty. They just don't have any happiness with their current item. And that makes me sad because I was the one who distributed the items, or at least it was a random distribution, but I set the randomization mechanism. So I said pick a number between 1 and 30. And boy, that left 16 of you unhappy. That's a shame. We have 2 people who are very wealthy with happiness. And that's very good for them. I'm happy for them. And we have another 5 who are quite happy as well. And 6, I'm not sure where that 6 fall. I don't know if they're almost happy or if they're almost unhappy. So that group I'm a little confused about. And this is where you would begin that discussion with your students of, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could bring those 16 people out of happiness poverty? And how could we do that? And of course, somebody is going to say, what? We could what? How could we bring those 16 people out of happiness poverty?
We can see if somebody has something that we want instead.
Woohoo, thank you. All right. Yeah. Hey, wait time is really important on these virtual calls. If you wait long enough, somebody will talk. Yes. So let's do that. I agree with you. And people are putting in the chat box now, we could trade. So I'm cool for that. Sorry, I'm going to turn my phone off there. Very rude. So we're going to try that. But I don't just want to open it up and just have like free range crazy trade. We're going to limit it a little bit. I just want to do like a gentle trade and see if we get any benefit from that. So I'm about to put you into a breakout room, and you're going to be in a breakout room, a fairly small size. There might only be 2 or 3 other people, and there may be 4 other people in there. And when you get into that breakout room, your goal is very simple. You want to discuss what you have, or you can put it in the chat box, whatever you want to do, and you can trade. Unless, everybody listening very closely here, unless you have an even number. Even numbers, that's me, I'm a 6, all right? Even numbers, you can listen, you can say what you have, but you are not allowed to trade at all. Under no circumstances may you make any trades, okay? Now, the way you're gonna trade is really just a verbal agreement, all right? So it's very simple. It's, it's hey, Scott, I want what you have, do you want what I have? I have this, yeah, let's trade, we agree, and then boom, the trade happens, okay? So you're not actually doing anything. I clarify that because you'd be surprised how many times the teachers ask me what they're actually wanting to trade. All right, so let's do, we're gonna do 8 rooms here. And you're gonna be randomly, I don't know who's gonna be in your room. I'll be in one of the rooms. So good to go there. All right, so please join your room and please participate. I always explain that to the teachers as well, that this is gonna work a lot better if you're actively engaged and you're talking to each other. And yeah, these are some good groups. I like this. All right, so good luck. Odd numbers, I hope you are able to improve your status. Even numbers, just, I don't know, listen and see if there's other stuff you might want that's out there in the world. All right, so your breakout room invite should now be popping up on your screen. Please click the button that says enter it and trade away. All right, everybody should be coming back now. Give just a second for those computers to reset themselves. Looks like we're all here. Okay, cool. Kathleen, I don't know the answer to that. It does on, Kathleen's asked, does it have an auto average feature? It does on some of their other slides. So Menti has a lot of different kinds of slides. And there's one for sure that I've used that definitely has that feature where you can, you slide like a rating scale and it gives you an average from the rating scale. This one, I don't know. I know I can change it to percentages, but I don't know about an auto average because that would be nice to have, I agree. There's like Socrative does that, or Socrative, if you wanted to use that. Yes, Ruth, I can, are you talking, Ruth, are you talking about the slide where you have everybody's item? Yeah, Derek, yeah, that's another solution to that too. Okay, yes, I'll put that up in just a second, but I kind of don't want to, did you forget your item? Because I don't want to do that just yet, because not everybody knows what all's out there. Okay, gotcha. What's your number? Oh, Ruth is a 6. That's right. I remember that because yeah, we did talk about. Oh, me and you are the same. You have a. I'll announce this for everybody. You have a year supply of Lucky Charms there, Ruth. A year supply of Lucky Charms. That's the same thing I've got. All right. So what would you do now? Now is your discussion time, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that with this group. I'm mainly just showing procedural stuff here. I don't think we need a big discussion on the benefits of trade with this group, but you may with your students. So that's what now is for. Now, what I've not done is done another rating right now. You could, you certainly could. And in the real activity you do. But normally I'm building this activity into a like 90-minute workshop where I want to try to do 2 or 3 other things with the teachers. And so I don't, want to spend too much time going back and forth. Let's Minty again, let's rate, let's vote. So I'll have a little discussion here, get a feel of the content level that the teachers are confident with, and then go ahead and move on. So I'm going to assume you guys know the benefits of trade and know we got some people who are traded that are happier. Oh, I skipped a step because I was talking. If you traded that round, if you would put the phrase "I traded" into the chat box, please. Put the phrase "I traded." I know we have 2 people, so Andrew traded, Julie traded, Angie traded. All right, good. Good. Scott traded. Oh, lots of people. All right, Derek traded with Scott. Good. All right. So if I had you rate yourself, ideally you would be better off, but we don't know that yet. But we're gonna find out in just a moment. Another point I always like to make here is even if you didn't trade, you may have changed the way you feel about your item, because this is just perception, right? We're not doing actual value or market value or anything like that. It's just perception. So your perception can change based on what you know other people have. So now you have more information than you had before. So you may rate yourself higher or lower just based on what you heard other people have. So we're going to sort of skip the second step and go right to the grand finale here. In the grand finale, everyone can trade. Woohoo! So even numbers, which means if you're still not happy with your item, there's about to be like 12 more items potentially on the market that have never been on the market before. I can tell you for sure that there will be at least 1 set of a year supply of Lucky Charms on the market because I am going to be offering that up. So I'm going to change up the breakout rooms, and this time I'm going to put you in a slightly bigger room, okay? And that is because I want to give you more people to talk to. Now, the problem with this is it takes a little more time because people have to wait for people to be quiet, and you're putting stuff in the chat box and whatever. So I'm gonna give you maybe a little bit more time, maybe like around 3 minutes this time, but that's about, yeah, definitely that's about it. And yeah, same thing, and I'll be joining one of the rooms. So everybody can trade. Everybody can trade. So when you get in your room, consider opening up a chat box and everybody put in the chat box what you have. That's a possibility. Go one at a time and everybody share. I have seen teachers write it on a piece of paper and hold it up to the camera or whatever. So whatever you want to do there. Okay, here we go. Your room assignments are out. And even if you traded once, trade again. All right, if everybody should be pretty much back with us now. And put "I traded" in the chat box if you traded. And when you're done with that, your second task is if you go back to your Minty page, wherever you have that pulled up, either on your other device like I do, or on your, whatever it is on, enter your new score, your final score. Now, you have now what you're gonna leave with. You've got, there's no more trading. We're done trading. So enter how happy you are with your item now, please. And I'm going to share what's on my screen here so you can see the final results. You probably know how this works, even if you've never seen the activity before. All right. So we have 28, 29, God, that's perfect. Okay, so the other thing that you don't usually get here, you usually don't get everybody that responds the second time because you lose some people, or some people are, whatever. I get how this works, and let's move on to the next thing. You get some disgruntled folks or whatever you get. But you guys are spot on here. So don't expect it to always go quite that smoothly. You guys, like Mike said earlier in the chat, this is an all-star group. It's not always like that. Okay, let's compare. Before we traded, we were 2 people very happy. We had 8 people very unhappy. After we allowed for everybody to trade, boom, magic, right? The magic of free trade. We now have 9 people who are very happy and only 2 who are very unhappy. So would one of the people who are a 1, would you please unmute yourself and let us know what you have?
I had, this is Teresa, I had exterior paint and I couldn't trade the first round and nobody wanted it the second round, so.
Nobody in your room wanted it.
Nobody in my room wanted it.
Let's see, is there anybody on the call who would like some exterior paint?
And they're all going, no.
And it's 1 gallon, right? Just like 1 gallon of paint?
Yep.
No, nobody. All right, sorry, Teresa.
I'll trade a can of Spam.
Oh, okay, hold on, here we go.
Oh, Debbie.
I'll give you 2 cans of Spam.
Oh. Do either of those work for you?
No, I think I'd rather paint than eat Spam.
Golly. All right, fair enough. Okay.
Thanks, though, Debbie.
Yeah.
And John.
With the other person who's a number 1, could you unmute yourself, please? Because I can't see who that would be.
I was a 1, but I'm not in there because my granddaughter has my phone. So.
Okay. All right. So what did you have, Dale?
Definitely a 1.
What did you have?
The yesterday's newspaper and
Yesterday's newspaper. Why were you giving that a 1?
Somebody can have it for kitty litter. Or...
Chris, I was a 1 also.
Okay. And what did you have?
Also the paper from yesterday.
All right. You have cats, though. You can just give it to the cats and let them.
They don't read, man.
Okay. All right. So I think everybody sort of gets the idea here. So like I said, I've run this now 9 times, and it's worked quite well all 9 times. I'm sure there are ways to improve this. So if you've got suggestions for that, certainly send that out to the network or drop it in that NAEE chat that's going. I don't want to spend too much time on that today because we could get lost in that, I think. Yeah, so Julie, I'm glad you brought that up. With a smaller number, the odds of this not turning out like ours go up. How do you explain? Very good question. So 2 things I do there. 1 is if it's a really small number, like only 6 people or so, like I had the other day, I make them pick 2 items. All right, so then they have 2. So then there's at least 12 items in the market. So that raises the stakes a little bit and makes it more likely. And I make them pick 1 odd and 1 even number. And that way they have something they can't trade and then something they can. So that's one option. The second thing is, and this, won't always be the case, of course. Here's one I did last week that had 7 people. And these were the results from that group. So you can tell it wasn't anywhere near as severe as ours because we started, of the 7, we started with 3 people who were pretty happy already. So it's nearly half the group. And, there's not as much room for trade there. So, Julie, another thing there is I make sure that I make a trade somehow or some way. So that way you at least see a little sway. And you don't have to say who you are or where you are. I always make myself a 1 in the first round. And then I trade something. I don't stop until I make at least 1 trade with somebody. And then I'll make myself a 5 and I'll make up some reason why it's a 5. So then you get that idea. If it just flat out doesn't work, which I've never had happen, honestly, I've never, ever had this. And I've been doing this probably since 2000, like 5, 6. And I've done it with, 3rd graders. I've done it with 6th graders, high schoolers, teachers. It's never not worked for me. So I don't know how I would explain it if it really didn't work, other than you need more items. Yeah, Julie, when there are 2 items, I change the rating to a 2 through 10. 2 through 10 scale. So you rate each item separately. I can write all this out. I should clarify, these aren't written in any formal lesson plan yet. These are all still just like ideas we're running because we're doing this on the fly. I do intend to write all this stuff out, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and make it more like lesson plan-y formatting. Yes, I will share slides 100%. I'm going to do that here in just a few minutes. Okay, so do you ever have a trading round with the full group? Sure, give it a try. When I had 68 teachers the other day, I was tempted to do that just to see what would happen. Zoom is weird with its volume. You guys probably experienced that just now in the chat room. It tries to pull, at least the way I think I understand the algorithm is it tries to pull the most recent sound up to the top, like volume-wise. And so that's a little hard for people to talk to each other. But yeah, give it a try. Like the worst thing that can happen is it's annoying and it's a noisy thing, and you just go, okay, well that didn't work. Do something different. Never be afraid to fail. Okay. Yes, Megan, you're right about that too. The first time I ran this, I had too much cool stuff, and that was bad too because I had like more than half the group was already happy, so I had to go in and add some things like yesterday's newspaper. Yeah, whatever. All right, let me move on to the market activity. If you've never, I'm sure most of you know about this video from Learn Liberty, but if you're not familiar with it, it gives an explanation of what we just did. So worst case scenario, if you weren't able to do this with students, if you showed this video, Dr. Munger explains the activity. He talks about doing it with t-shirts and how you just throw out shirts to the classroom and all random sizes, and some people are happy, some aren't. You let them trade, some more people get happy, so on and so forth. Okay. So we got about 20 minutes left, and I want to show you what we sort of worked up for a market activity. There are several difficulties with the market activity, but I think we've solved most of them. And there's two ways to approach this, I think, at least that we've come up with so far. If you want to do it the traditional way, let me backtrack again, just in case you've never done it. The market activity is exactly what it sounds like. Half the room is buyers, half the room is sellers. They have a card, depending on whose version of the lesson you're using, it's slightly different, but the card puts parameters on what they're allowed to do. So it might say you're a buyer of wheat or oil or cocoa or computers or whatever, and you are allowed to spend up to, and there's a dollar amount. The goal for the student is to try to buy a computer for less than that dollar amount, right? Sellers, same thing, but reverse. So they have a minimum amount and they're trying to sell for the highest price they can above it. If you're trying to run it that way, here's what we worked out the other day when I was doing this in sort of demo mode. There's that link that you're seeing there on slide 17, and you're going to get these slides. Not that they're super fancy or anything, but they might remind you of procedural things. On slide 17, if you clicked that link, it would take you to this document. So the way we're going to split the room up here, and I'm splitting you up now too, so pay attention to this. If you have an odd number month for your month of birth, so your January, March, May, July, September, November, you are a seller, okay? And you're going to be a seller the whole time. You're never going to change. I'm never going to switch you. You're a seller for the next 15, 20 minutes, however long you're going to do the activity. And you could share this handout with students. You could give it to them in advance, whatever you wanted to do. And it's basically got all the information you need here. There's a couple of examples. You would put in your minimum price, which would be your day of birth, right? So your birthday, your actual day, is the minimum amount you should try to sell for, okay? And then there's some examples there. If you have an even numbered birth month, so February, April, June, August, October, December, you are a buyer, okay? And you're not going to switch out of that. You're going to be a buyer, and you're trying to buy whatever product. I have cocoa here, but it could be anything, right? And you are trying to buy for the lowest price possible. In fact, if you could get somebody to give it to you for $0, you'd be thrilled with that, okay? And the way you're going to determine your profit is by filling out that document there. So I'm skipping over a lot of steps here just because I want to get to the big reveal or whatever. I also know a lot of you do these activities and you know how they work, so you don't need me to explain all the details. If you don't know these activities and know how they work, I promise we'll get some kind of write-up of this in the near future. But these activities are actually already written up. We're just doing virtual versions of them. So in the CE's high school economics book, there's a version of this. I'm not sure who wrote it. It could be somebody on the call here for all I know. But the procedures are already written there. And then there's classic versions of the market and wheat, oil, and stuff like that as well. So one option, if you wanted to do the breakout rooms thing like we just did, is you would follow the instructions on the student handout. So you split the group into buyers and sellers based on your birth month. They should have this document. I obviously didn't share it with you because we're going to do it a different way, but the students would have this document, or the teachers as it were, and you would make sure they understood how to fill in the part they should be filling in, all that kind of stuff. And then you send them into a breakout room to talk it over. Like, go, try to make it happen. And they argue and they debate and they whatever, and they try to make trades, okay? Same thing we just did, right? Only this time they're bound. And you tell them they really should only try to make one trade per round. So if they make an exchange, don't make any more for that round. Keep it kind of short, bring them back together, debrief what happened, what went wrong, what went well, yada, yada. Reorganize the breakout rooms, repeat, all right? And do that 2 or 3 times. That's the same thing as when they're in the room talking to each other, so on and so forth. Now, a problem with this strategy, and you are probably already seeing it, is you automatically know the maximum price. You know that there shouldn't be anybody in the room buying for more than $31, right? There shouldn't be. There could be, I guess, if they wanted to. But there should be nobody in the room buying for more than 31. If you go back to my initial slides, that's just one of those limitations. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's not the most efficient market probably. You're also not necessarily getting them where they're all talking to each other, but I think it would work. I haven't done it that way yet. I plan on doing it that way in a couple of weeks. I have a workshop and I'm gonna try it that way and see what happens. If you do want to vary the prices a little bit though, and give it a little more fluctuation, then on that last bullet, you see one teacher suggested, well, bring them back together and then say something like, your company has now said you can add $5 to your birthday. So if you had a 20, now you have a 25. Or subtract if you want to, or go the other way with it. So, oh, everybody's been cut half, you cut your birthday in half, that's your new number, whatever. Doing that would give you a little more variability. You run a few of those rounds, then you could come back together and talk about, you know, who made the most profit, who made the least profits, what was hard, all right. So that's sort of the traditional model, right? Since we just did a breakout room thing where we were trading, I want to do a slightly different version and show you a different spin on this that I think is cooler for a virtual setting. So here's what we're going to do. We are not actually going to negotiate like you would in a market. We are going to enter numbers sort of silently, more like silent auction style. All right, so again, to remind you, think of your birthday. Everybody got your birthday in mind? Whatever the month of your birthday is determines whether you're a buyer or a seller. If you're an odd number, you're a seller. You're going to be selling cocoa or whatever. If you're an even number, you're a buyer. So I'm a buyer, okay? I'm August 6th. The day of your birth is your limit. So if you're a seller, then the day of your birth is the lowest amount you want to accept. You can accept, you want to sell your cocoa for. Now, it also said on that sheet right here, I skipped over this, because it'll tell you something like, right here, if you don't buy or don't sell any cocoa, you're going to be fired. So you have an incentive to sell, all right, or buy or whatever your number is. So don't just go in and be like, I don't care about that. I'm just going to go ahead and put 31 up there. Be careful about doing that unless your birthday is 31, and that's unfortunate. And if you're a buyer, you're going to be buying, obviously. Now, how are you going to enter this information? You are going to enter it into this Google form that I'm going to put in the chat box right now. All right, so if you would, please click on the chat box there. I'm sorry, click on the link inside of the chat box. And that will take you to this Google form. It'll take you to a Google form. And you're going to enter whether you're a buyer or seller and what you would like to buy or sell for. I'll enter as well. So it's in the chat box if you're looking for it. I'm a buyer because I'm an even number month. And I would like to buy, maybe somebody's selling for $4. All right, if you've never used Google Forms before, you may have to do a little work on that, just training yourself and teaching yourself some of the nuances of Google Forms. I plan to, when I write this up, explain all the technical stuff. Hopefully in the next, like I said, week or two. This one's not quite smoothed out yet, so I want to smooth this out a little more before I go writing this one up. All right, here we go. Ready? How are we going to know what just happened? So when I click responses, I get a list of everybody's name. But check this out. This is kind of a cool thing here. This distribution of prices shows you kind of where the room is. So buyers are ranging everywhere from 0, right? There's somebody in the room who wants free cocoa, up to $29. Wow, there's somebody in the room willing to pay $29 for cocoa. How does that match up with our sellers? Oh, well, sellers, the lowest we got is 10. So that person who wants free cocoa, that's unfortunate because it doesn't look to me like you're going to get it. On the high side, somebody is trying to sell cocoa out there for $31. Actually, 2 people are trying to sell it for $31. As you probably should if that's your birthday, but it's going to be tough because I don't see any buyers willing to pay that amount. Now, from here, you could start doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? You could take this, and I know some of your brains are already turning in how you could use this data. Let me show you what I want to do with it, and then I'll try to save a few minutes, or we could talk this one out maybe just a little bit. Do you automatically use your birthday for the highest price? Could you gamble? Yeah, Ted. Yeah, gamble. I didn't use my max. I wanted to try to make some money. So, for example, my birthday is the 6th, but I put in $3. Because I would like to try to make some money on that. And that I probably didn't explain very well verbally just now, but I'll make sure I put that in the write-up of this. Yeah, the goal is you want to try to make a profit. So my birthday is the 6th, so I put $3 in there because I'd like to buy oil for $3. I make a profit of $3 if I do that. So my apologies for going through that probably a little too fast there. All right, here we go. I'm sorry, in case you didn't see what I just did there. I clicked this little green button, and this green button here is going to send this into a spreadsheet, and that's going to help me do what I want to do with it. So I'm going to pretend you guys are my students, and what I'm wanting to teach you with this, my purpose of doing this, is I want to show you how a supply and a demand line is built. Like, where do they come from? Because we're about to manipulate them a whole lot. We're going to be shifting them, and I want you to understand how they're created in the first place, all right? So I've got my data here, and I want to sort this data, and I'm going to click my data here, and I'm going to sort 2 ways. I'm going to sort column D from highest to lowest, and then column C from highest to lowest. And you'll see why I'm doing that here in just a second. All right, I'm going to get rid of my timestamp here. I don't need this column. Here's all I really need. Okay, cool. And I don't know why Google does this for some reason, but Alicia, put you up here in the middle for some reason. Oh, Alicia, did you fill this out twice? Oh, no, I see what you did. I got it. Yep. So we really didn't have a buyer wanting to buy for 0. Okay, because you were at 20 on the seller side. Cool. Here we go. What am I doing with this? I want to build my supply and demand lines, all right? But I want to use your data, because you guys are cool, right? And I want to find out what my numbers will be. So here's how this is going to work. I want to start building my supply line. So I'm going to look at the sellers here. Everybody just focus on column D with me for a second. All right? Everybody in column D, you're staring at column D there with me. I want to find out what's the cheapest amount anybody was willing to sell for. And it turns out it was Julie. Julie was willing to sell her cocoa for $10. How many other sellers were willing to sell for $10? Chat it or just call it out. How many other sellers were willing to sell for $10?
0.
According to our data, 0. Bingo. Perfect. All right. So 1 is the number of sellers who are willing to sell for $10. So I have a graph here pre-created, and I'm using Cami, but you could use any annotation software. I could actually annotate this inside of Zoom if I wanted to. So whatever you use for your annotation software, good to go. And I don't know, obviously this is going to be my price axis over here, and this is going to be my quantity, but I don't know before the game starts how many people I'm going to have. But I do know what my top price is. I know it's going to be 31, so I have that pre-labeled. All right, so at $10, we have one person, and I'm actually going to label these by 2. So we're going to say that's 2 for with this group here. I think that'll be good enough to go. All right, you see, that's a 10. Go on, so on and so forth. All right, so at $10, here is Julie right there. Woohoo! Everybody say, hey, Julie right there. That's you. That's your dot. At $10, she was the 1 person willing to sell oil. All right, what if I go to the next price, which was 14. Debbie's selling at 14. Julie, are you there? Julie, are you still with us?
Yep.
All right, Julie, if I came to you and I said, hey, Julie, I'm buying oil and I'm willing to buy for 14, would you also be willing to sell for 14? You were willing to sell for 10.
Yes, I'm willing to sell for 14.
Oh, great. Okay. So guess what that means, folks? That means if the price were actually $14, not only would Debbie sell, but Julie would too. So how many people do we have that would sell for $14? We have two. 2 units of cocoa or whatever would actually be sold for $14. And I think you see where I'm going with this. So at 14, we have 2. Woo-hoo. There's Julie and Debbie. Julie and Debbie. All right, now you could take it from here. You can do a couple of things. We're gonna have 3 people. I'm gonna speed up here because I want to stop it too, like I said I would. You don't have a favorite annotation software. I can help. So 15, we would have 3 people because at $15, Megan is excited enough to join in. She says, "Yeah, I'll play at 15." So she jumps in. There's Megan. We got 3 people now at 15. And I do want to show you 17 to show you what happens here because something interesting happens. Bonnie's all fired up when we get to 16, and Bonnie's like, I'm in. So it's $16 an hour up to 4 people are in. I probably should have spread these out a little bit. That's my fault. My apologies on that. Look what happens when we get to 17 though. 17 is like a magic number. 20 is even better. When we hit 17, Joy's in there twice for some reason.
Twice. I'm sorry. I don't know how I did that.
Let's just pretend there's one of you. Let's go to 20. 20 is more exciting then. That's okay, Joy, no worries. So at 17, we have 5 people. Oops. 17, there's my 5. And look what happens when we get to 20. Now at 20, is that Genzy? Genzy, am I saying that right? Genzy? Leslie's in, and Alicia, all 3 of them. So we don't go from 5 to 6. What do we go from 5 to 8 people are now interested in selling cocoa at $20, right? If you're like, well, how did you get there? Well, these 3, right, count them up. Only count one of Joy. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom, 8 people. They're excited. And so at $20, we jump up here, and this has become sort of a step equation. At $20, we jump all the way over here to 8, and so on and so forth. All right, so you see where I'm going with this. I could keep going. I don't know how many more people we have. It's going to end up somewhere over here. There's only like 12 or 13 of you or whatever. And I then grab my marker here, and I draw this cutesy little line here. Woo! And what have you guys just created?
Supply curve.
And it's not just any supply curve, it's your supply curve that you created based on the data that you gave me. This chart right here, we would refer to as a supply and demand schedule. And we can take that data and turn it into a curve. And that's how all supply curves are created. Whether they're the fictional ones you're going to be drawing or the real life ones or whatever. In this market at 1:57 p.m. on Friday, August 28th at 2 o'clock, nobody's selling oil for less than $10. And only one person is selling at that price. But as the price increases, more and more and more sellers get excited. Or another way to say it is the same sellers might be willing to sell more, right? It might be the case that Julie is now just willing to sell 2 units at 14, whereas she was only willing to sell 1 at 10. We would do the same thing on the demand side, except you want to go the other way. You want to go the other way. You want to start with the highest price. Who is willing to pay the highest price? Kathleen, that was you. So Kathleen is willing to pay 29. Oops, that's a different annotation software there too. That's Sketchpad Pro. Let's change colors here real quick. I just want to do this, just a few dots on this to give you an idea. Here's Kathleen. Kathleen, well, she has got deep pockets over there. And there's Kathleen. She's willing to pay $29, but she's the only one. And let's go. So there's only one of her. And we have a big drop off. We drop all the way down to $20. Kathleen, are you there?
Yes.
All right, Kathleen, if you were willing to pay $29, right? Let's say you were willing to pay $29 and you walk into a store and they have a sign there. It says cocoa, $20. Are you going to be more happy or less happy?
More happy.
More happy. So you would also buy at 20, right?
Yes.
So if the price was actually 20, we would have both Kathleen and Stephen, and now we would have at $20, which is a big drop, we'd have 2 people who are interested in buying cocoa. And you go on from there. That's the gist of it. It really, and one thing I do like about doing it this way too, so I don't know where we would cross. We'd cross somewhere, and then we could talk about what that point meant. I understand there's all sorts of issues here with efficiency, the fact that there's a price ceiling of sorts set at the 31. I get all that, but try to think about like your most basic, student who just is like struggling with all this. And before you start drawing curves and shifting them around and doing all this crazy stuff, you just show them line by line. Here's how it was built. Here's how we got this number. And I think you could go through it even a little slower than I just did with you. One final point, and then I'll stop and let people go if they need to, or I'll hang around and discuss more if you want, is if you do it this way, something kind of cool you can do, at least with Cami, is when you get ready to talk about shifting these curves, for example, you want to talk about the supply line shifting, say, well, what if I gave each of the sellers, some kind of really big tax incentive, right? I'm going to pay you to sell cocoa. So for every cocoa pound you sell, you get an extra $1. Well, that's going to make Julie pretty excited, and she's going to want to sell more, right? So Julie, that's Julie's dot, remember? Julie will sell more, good. But that's also, at the same time, going to make, I forget who these people were, Debbie, she'll be more excited to sell more. But so will these people who are willing to sell at 50. They'd be willing to sell more. Well, so with these people. And what's kind of cool is you see why lines start to shift. Whoops. Because it's not that the quote line is shifting. It's that each point on the line, each quantity supplied is more interesting now. And then I can draw me a new line there. So I like that kind of stuff. I usually do it with magnets in a classroom, but if you don't have magnets, that's a good substitute for that. So boom. 2 o'clock on the spot. So I'm officially done. I will put the link to the slides in the chat box over here. I'll also add it to the NAEE chat as well. And I'm going to make it a forced copy. So I keep these intact. And then, totally willing to hang out and discuss it. So in the chat box, you can click on and get directly to this. And I promise I'll let everyone know when I get the actual write-ups of everything done. Because I know I did a whole bunch of stuff there that people were like, what is he clicking on? Why is he going back and forth between these panels and all? I'll write all that out. So, boom. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Chris, quick question. During the market game that you just did, is there and you probably skipped over this, but is there a part where the students are supposed to actually try to trade with each other at those prices that they put down?
Yeah, I tried that on Wednesday, and it was fine with like 6 people. I don't know how it would scale, but yeah, you could certainly try it. With 6 people, it was fine. Oh yeah, hold on, let me fix that problem. Sorry about that. I just realized I made a new. There you go. All right, now try it again, everybody. Sorry about that. Yes, I think you could, because like if I went back to my data here, I could talk to, well, oh, there we go. So I could talk to like Stephen and Jinsey, for example, and say, hey, you guys both said 20. That's an actual trade. You guys could have actually traded. Whereas Nancy, you put 31. Nobody's buying at 31. Would you be willing to come down to 29? Or Kathleen, would you be willing to go up to 30? And I could try to barter what do you call that? I could try to negotiate those trades that way. So if you come up with a cooler way to do it, let me know.
Yeah, I think it works really, really well as a how to build supply and demand graphs kind of activity. But as far as the actual the trade game's much better as far as seeing the value to the trades, where this is more building the demand and supply schedules and graphing that kind of stuff. But it works really good.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think if you did the breakout room version, I think you could get some of that negotiation to still happen.
So what started?
I had a teacher. Go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say, so what started this off was I had asked, we're looking, my development committee and I are looking to set up some house gatherings, which
Yes.
we typically would do in person, of course, but now have to do virtually. And so what I really wanted to, I wanted something short that really sent the message that when we teach teachers about economic and financial education, what we focus on is getting them engaged. We
Right.
don't give teachers a bunch of notes and,
Right.
and definitions and say, okay, this is how you teach economics. So this was great. Thank you. And if anybody has any other suggestions for short demonstrations of how we teach experientially, I would still appreciate getting those recommendations. So thank you, Chris. You were wonderful to share this.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And Julie, I wanted to let you know too, in Arizona, we did the Invention Convention, and we also did the fishing game for the Tragedy of Commons virtually. So if you wanted to take a look at those, we'd be happy to share.
Please, I would love that.
Hey,
Okay.
Teresa, can you give me like the elevator pitch of how you did the Tragedy of the Commons thing? How did that work?
Actually, if Kathy's still here, Kathy was the brain
Sure.
behind that one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah. So just the, high level version, I use Google Slides, and
Okay.
I created the lake on the Google Slides that was full of goldfish. And I did the version where there are 16 fish in the lake and 4
Yep.
fishers, and each one can choose 1, 2, 3, or 4 fish.
Okay.
And then there was like a little holding box below the lake. So I'm happy to show that link. And then it repopulated after the round.
Right.
2 fish satisfied their families' hunger needs. 3 was a profit. 4 was more profit. So then they had to choose. So just with Google Slides, and then I
Okay.
shared the slide, and
Yeah.
they could interact on the slide at the same time. So if you'd like, I can kind of just share that link for you guys to take a look at.
I love that. That sounds fun. I'd absolutely do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so
And
much.
I know that Debbie Henney did kind of a version of that as well, but we really enjoyed it. It worked well for us.
Yeah, that's cool. I could see using a Jamboard for that too, and
Mhm.
making them actually go grab the things and like drag it. Like,
Yeah.
go
That's
fish.
what they did on the Google Slide. They
Oh,
had
that's
to
what they
click
did on the
and
Google Slide.
drag.
Okay.
They did. They clicked and dragged, and then
That's
we
awesome.
repopulated it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd absolutely be all over that.
Did you do Invention Convention?
I did. We did it with 51 teachers for our summer boot camp. we put them in breakout rooms, and they just had to find items around their house. So we made a list of random things people would have around their house and attach prices to it for the supplies. And then within their breakout room group, they had to build something, and then we brought them back, and we spotlighted the person giving the sales pitch, and then we went through, and I created a table to fill in how many they sold at what price, and we did all the calculations, similar to what Chris just did with the table. I just shared my screen, but we put them in breakout rooms, and they just had to find random things. One person had to volunteer to find things around their house, as everybody else gave them input and put the pitch together.
Yeah, it's really fun. And it made me not want to do the Invention Convention in person ever again. It's so much easier to do it virtually because you are not responsible for this whole box of stuff,
Nope.
right?
And we added, it was really funny actually, sign of the times, but we had 7 groups and 6 of them did different kinds of face masks. So we had one that was made out of coffee filters, one that was made out of a paper plate. It was just random stuff from around their house. But the item that ended up winning was they had taken a plastic fork and taped it to a pen, and they called it a dingle hopper. And so they had all kinds of random things. They were showing how they would use it. So it was a lot of fun, though. And like I said, we had 51 teachers at that one. So it was a good time.
Teresa, could you share some more detail about that as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I have a question I'd like to ask a number of you in terms of doing this. The question has to do in terms of the crudeness of as we do these things versus professionalism. My view has always been that if you had things always come out right, the students learned less. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, in my case, I think one of the problems is if you lose the students or they come out of the activity having the wrong impression, right? And I think that's always a super challenge. I think one of the things we did have learned about the in-person activities is that sometimes a practice round is valuable, but of course it takes time. But I think sometimes that's a helpful thing. But I think all of us, our concern is that the students are going to leave with the wrong conclusion, and active learning can be scary like that. That's sometimes why teachers don't want to do it, is because they're scared of what the outcome's going to be. It is more helpful when we see somebody else do it first.
Well, I guess my issue is like when we were doing the supplant the market one is that, you know, getting things in the right place is that I find that my students get more engaged if I end up putting the price in the wrong place and they're actually involved with it, because rather than watching me come out everything perfect, you know, you could set it up so it transfers automatically, but then they're not engaged with it.
You could have the students do it in a breakout room and have them annotate on their own and then share their answers if you wanted to get everyone involved.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else for the good of the order here?
Right, y'all. I got to go. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Stephen.
Okay.
Just Kathy, Teresa, everybody.
Upload their things to NAEE chat so we can
absolutely.
easily find it.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a good idea, Marcia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All these up there.
Thank you all. Good to see your faces.
Yeah.
Always good to share.
Thank you.
Have a
nice
great weekend, everybody.
Take
care.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Chris, did you say I have one quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, sorry for joining so late. I'm in a place where it rained and I didn't have internet connection.
Oh, no worries. Okay. I'm glad you could be here.
And I joined on my phone where I had to be in listen only mode. So that was interesting. But when people responded in the Google form and it put in their names and then it sorted everything by the number, you know, the numbers were all sorted so you could easily build the supply and demand curves, not based on the time in which we replied. How did you get it to do that?
Yeah, I'll show you here. And this is the kind of stuff, yeah, I have to type out and put into the thing.
So you had to set that up in advance, even though our responses were not in.
I couldn't put it because I didn't know what your responses were going to be.
Oh, you just did it before you showed it to us.
Yeah, so basically, yeah. So if you're, I don't know if you can see my screen now. So when I pull up, this is just the survey page. So when I click up here in the top, there's a green box. Yeah, so that pulls. Well, it's pulling it up. It pulls it up like this originally by time. So let's just go to how it originally does it. All right, so when you first get it, it looks like this, right? And then this column's not here at all because I added that column. So all it is, I highlighted everything, all right? And then under data, there's a sort range. And I want that because I want to be able to sort two columns. So over here, I can sort by whatever my columns are. So I want to sort by the seller amount, highest to lowest, or Z to A. And then after that, I want to sort by the buyer amount, Z to A. And then boom, that's how it puts it.
Oh, I see. So the Z to A still does numbers.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Great. That helps a lot. I think this was a really fun idea to try things. And as people develop different lessons to try in person, it's really useful to be a participant. So,
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, Ted, I appreciate your comments as well. Wanda, I think you may have just joined us. We just finished, so I may have gotten your time zones messed up maybe. Sorry about that.
Well, thank you, Chris. Really interesting.
Thanks, Ted. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You guys have a good weekend.